Hello, it's me again. Today I'd like to talk about different things you can do while you're reading with your student over the summer. Remember, it's important to do lots and lots of reading. This reading can look many different ways. It can be reading to your student. It can be having your student read you a favorite story that they might have memorized. It can also be just telling stories. The verbal telling of stories is really good practice for sequencing and remembering different details and comprehension strategies. It might be hard to believe, but there's lots that can be learned before you even read the story, especially for early readers. So when you're reading a story, be sure to preview the book really thoroughly. Now, be sure to monitor your student's attention, and you don't want to draw it out too long, but keep it interesting. So, first things first, start with the cover. For example, I have this story, Tacky the Penguin. Read the title to the student, Tacky the Penguin. You might point to the different words, see if they can recognize any letters. If they're words that your student might know, have them read them. Make predictions. Use the illustrations and the titles to predict what the story might be about or what might happen in the story. See if you have any connections with this story. What do you already know about the subject? Have you been to the zoo and seen different penguins at the zoo? What do you know about bears? Do you live somewhere that there's sometimes bears in the backyard in your garage? What about animals wearing clothes? Do we think this is a true story or maybe a make-believe story? There's lots of questions that can be asked and lots of predictions that your student will be able to make. If your student's having a hard time making predictions, model your thinking. Talk out loud about what you might predict, and with this practice, they will begin to make their own predictions. Next, you're going to want to take a picture walk. You're going to flip through the pages and make a few predictions. Look at that wacky penguin upside down. And as you flip through the story, notice different parts of the story. Don't tell the entire story, but see if there's anything that stands out to you. Pictures support the text, especially in beginning stories, early readers, so make sure that you can let the students do that. After you've checked out the cover and taken a picture walk, then it's time to begin the reading. Now it's time to begin the reading. During your reading, model what you're thinking. Talk about the text with your student. The tricky part is to keep it engaging. This is where you really need to read your child and make sure that they're engaged. Sometimes they might want to stop and talk about different details. Other times they'll just want to keep it moving. So most importantly, keep it enjoyable for the student. Choose some spots to stop and maybe make connections, personal connections. You can also make predictions about what might happen next. Allow the student to point out letters or words that they might already recognize. This is also another really great time for echo reading, which I'll tell you a little bit more about further in this video. Now it's time to talk about your reading. Have a discussion with your child about their story. Ask them, what was their favorite part of the story? Why? Maybe have them retell some of the main events of the story or what the moral of the story was. You could ask them to tell the story back in order to help with their sequencing and comprehension skills. Ask them to make a prediction. What might happen next in the story if it was a little bit longer? Could they act out the main events of the story? If your student's having a hard time with answering any of these questions, make sure it's not getting too exhausting. If students are tired and over it, maybe just have a shorter discussion. Other times, keep for a longer discussion. Model what you might be thinking. Maybe make a prediction for what you might think might happen at the end of the story. Students are really learning from what they see readers around them doing. So anything we can do to help them start thinking about their reading and making those predictions is really stepping them one step ahead. Last, I'd like to talk about two really great tools that help beginning readers. The first is repeated reading. Just like students like the predictability of watching a movie again and again or of listening to a song again and again, they like to read stories that they can predict and they know what to expect. Make sure that you have a selection of family favorites. Maybe choose a bin where you put your family favorites. Think back to what you really liked as a child. I know I loved The Giving Tree, and I remember the time that I was first able to retell the story to my parents, or I caught them when they were skipping a couple pages because it was getting late and they didn't want to read through the whole story. So make sure that you can let your student have that same experience and enjoy repeated reading. Next, I'd like to talk about echo reading. Echo reading, like it might sound, is when the adult reader reads a page or a phrase fluently, meaning reading how we might speak it, pointing to each word. And then you have the reader echo and model, pointing to each word. This strategy really supports early readers. It helps with the one-to-one correspondence of each word has an individual spacing. It helps with fluency, confidence, and then also word recognition. This is how students begin to learn some of the words that can't quite be sounded out, the sight words that we just need to learn how to remember. So while you're reading with your student, remember these two strategies of repeated reading and echo reading to help with the enjoyment and engagement of reading. I hope you and your family can find some time in your busy summer to practice some of these strategies and tools. I really look forward to a great year of kindergarten and can't wait to meet everyone. See you soon.